Without objection, the chair may declare the committee in recess at any point. Without objection, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence, Mr. Pfluger, and the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Magaziner, will be afforded 5 minutes each to make opening statements. The purpose of this hearing is to receive testimony on the threats posed by the Iranian regime to the homeland. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. There is no doubt that the Iranian regime poses a significant threat to the United States homeland and to our allies. This threat is real and it is growing. Tehran continues to furnish weapons, funding, and training to its surrogates across the globe who engage in heinous acts of terror. On October 7th of this year, which coincided with the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, the world witnessed the horrific and grotesque atrocities that occurred in Israel. Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization backed by the Iranian regime, launched this deadly, multi-pronged land, air, and sea attack inside Israel, with terrorists infiltrating Israel's southern border and firing thousands of rockets from Gaza. Over 1,400 Israelis were killed, with a significant number being innocent civilians, women, children, and the elderly. More than 2,800 Israelis have been wounded, including some in critical condition. At least 32 Americans were killed in Israel, and an unknown number of Americans are also being held as hostages by Hamas. The sheer brutality of these acts of terror is horrific. It's hard to watch the videos. Hamas terrorists hunted down hundreds of young people innocently celebrating at a music festival to murder and rape them. They killed a grandmother and then used her phone to post her murder on her own Facebook page. They murdered a young man, and his girlfriend filmed the murder on the man's phone and texted the barbaric video to his mother. They raped and murdered women and then paraded their bodies in the streets. These monsters murdered and burned helpless babies. They massacred whole families. These innocent people were killed for merely living in the state of Israel and being Jewish. Let me be clear to anyone who's listening. Hamas isn't motivated by some territorial dispute. Much like Nazi Germany, these terrorists are driven by a deep hatred of the Jewish people. Their stated goal, as mentioned in their charter, is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the extinction of the Jewish people. As we are currently seeing, Hamas routinely uses civilians, women, and children as human shields. The whole world must see and hear exactly what happened. It is disgusting and appalling that so many apologists have not condemned these barbaric acts of terror. I've been shocked at the horrifying anti-Semitism being displayed in some of our cities, on our college campuses, and even in the halls of Congress. Anything but a complete condemnation of Hamas and their brutal atrocities is unacceptable. We must stand with the state of Israel and give our unwavering support as Israel defends itself against the heinous attacks by Hamas. We also must condemn the forces behind Hamas, the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is the muscle and the money empowering this reign of terror. For years, the Iranian regime has provided financial, military, political, and diplomatic support to various proxies, including Hamas. They use these terrorist groups to attack Israel and Americans and our interests across the globe, even in our own backyard. The Iranian regime and its surrogates maintain a presence in the Western Hemisphere. Just this year, the Iranian Navy docked warships in Rio de Janeiro, and the regime held high-level meetings in the capitals of Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Iranian-backed Hezbollah also maintains a presence in the region. The terror group has operated throughout South America for decades and has carried out attacks on Israeli targets in Argentina. Hezbollah has also worked closely with the drug cartels in Latin America to traffic drugs across the globe and launder money for these transnational criminal organizations. These threats are closer than most Americans realize. and that's because of our porous southwest border. Under President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas, the volume of known gotaway crossing our border has skyrocketed. And so has the number of individuals who appear on the known or suspected terrorist watch list and the number of special interest aliens, which are people from countries identified as having conditions that promote and protect terrorism or possibly present a national security threat to this country. I'm extremely concerned that terrorists will exploit these glaring vulnerabilities at our southwest border to attempt attacks inside the United States. Just a few weeks ago, one human smuggling group with significant ties to ISIS moved Uzbeki nationals into the United States, and some of these individuals smuggled into our country still remain at large. This should concern every single one of us. This administration's policies and its misguided decisions have appeased tyrants and created significant national security vulnerabilities. The Biden administration's display of weakness on the world stage, from the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, weak posture towards Russia before the invasion of Ukraine, to reckless negotiations with Iran, threatens our homeland security and our national interests. History's clear. Appeasement doesn't work. While the Biden administration was busy cutting deals with the Iranian regime, Hamas was preparing for its attacks. Kowtowing to tyrants and their proxies is always a mistake. This administration is continuing to repeat the same mistakes of the past. The Trump administration was right to remove the United States from the flawed Iran nuclear deal and to reimpose sanctions. It was also right to eliminate Qasem Soleimani, who was responsible for the deaths of thousands, including hundreds of U.S. troops in Iraq. My friends, these decisive actions told the Iranian regime that real consequences come when you threaten the United States. That message has been lost under this administration, and our adversaries know it. As I indicated at the onset, the Iranian regime's threats to the homeland are real and are growing. They've sought to conduct cyber attacks on our state and local governments and private industry. The regime continues to pursue an opportunistic approach to cyber warfare, which makes the United States and our allies' critical infrastructure susceptible to that attack. They've plotted to target and assassinate individuals inside the United States, including former Trump officials. They've also sought to abduct or assassinate Iranians living in the United States who are critical of their regime, such as Masih Alinejad, an Iranian-American journalist testifying before the committee today. The Iranian regime is becoming more determined and more adept in its malicious activity. We must remain vigilant. Now I'd like to deviate for a second from my script and just say to the Iranian people who are freedom-loving, we know of your suffering, and you are in our prayers.